Hello, everybody, after our short break. Now we're looking for our second session of our architecture development track. And now with me is Spyridon Maniotis. Hello, can you do? I thought I saw your session title, "Two Speed into Institutional Bank," and I thought, you know, banks and speed. I thought that they are contradictory terms. So what was that?
Yeah, it sounds a little bit paradoxical, though it is the essence on why most of thinking banks and deploy DevOps practices actually in order to become faster,
Mhm.
both creating different speed levels internally, so get people in certain areas to go faster because of business and compliance reasons primarily, but also to compete with new entrants in the industry.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm really interested in your session. So keeping fingers crossed for you and for your session, and the floor is yours.
Great. Hope everyone can see my screen. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the session. My name is Spyridon. I'm based in London, rather cloudy today. I'm here with us at Capco. Capco is a management consulting firm that is dedicated to the financial service industry. So basically, what we do, we help incubate banks, and the definition of them is large corporate banks that have a long living history. It's the biggest banks you can think of, both from a business but also technological perspective to transform. Today, I'm going to give you a little bit of a taste. Half an hour is not enough to deep dive on everything, but it gives you a little bit of a taste of what is the value proposition of creating different speeds in incumbent banks, and tips and perspectives on how this can be achieved using DevOps and SRE practices. So, getting started, a little bit of the agenda. We're going to look into the financial services industry context in relation to DevOps, both externally and internally. I'm going to give you an explanation of what I mean with multi-speeds, along with an example from the banking industry, so you can relate. And then we're going to discuss what is the problem/opportunity statement when creating multi-speeds in the corporate environment. After that, we're going to look into four main perspectives on how this can be achieved, with the one being the criticality of your portfolio and architectural perspectives, then how you can have a speedy enablement, but getting different parts of the organization joining forces, I call it all hands on deck, how frameworks can become decisively important, and then what to be conscious when you design, organize the principles and structures of the teams that need to move faster. So getting started, the the external context is of banking at the moment is characterized by four main factors. One is increased profitability. So after the financial crisis of 2008 and banks tried to find the steps and a lot of restructures and everything, the recent years have been characterized by profitability. So they do quite well from a cost income ratio perspective, which means they have more capital to allocate and invest on transformations. Regulators are becoming more rigorous, and here I mean they get deeper now into how banks also deliver technology. They were historically primarily focused on business areas, but now they really take the technological taste of what they expect, and that is in public cloud adoption, this is in IT risk management frameworks around software development and the likes. Changing customer habits. I'm certain that most of you visited last time a physical branch of your bank many years ago, and if you are quite much younger than me, probably that never happened. There is a lot of proliferation of new entrants, and with new entrants in this case, I mean new financial services companies entering the industry. I don't call them fintech because fintech stands for financial technology, and even an old bank uses financial technology. But these are neobanks like N26 and Revolut. There is composable banking platforms like Mambu and so on. So the ecosystem is proliferating. And then there's rapid technological advancement. So more technologies are available for banks. The cloud adoptions are moving quite fast, so more opportunities on deploying technology in order to transform. Now, looking a little bit into the internal context, what incumbent banks are look at the moment in response to that and in relation to DevOps. So most of them they shift towards what we say enterprise business agility. They deploy enterprise agile models like Save, Spotify, value streams, or a combo of those that they name based on tailor-made definitions they create. And then they try to map those to DevOps. So do a DevOps enterprise, a business agility enterprise reconciliation. A lot of work on platform modernization and reliability. They do understand, on the one hand, that all legacy is slowing you down, and they try to get out of it. And then they look into reliability because it's becoming a decisive factor of competition. Most of the neobanks I mentioned in the external factors, they're quite reliable. You barely hear of them having outages and fragility. So there is a strong element of competition on reliability and availability aspects. Compliance as code. So regulators are becoming more rigorous and with increased regulatory requirements. And if those are not being built in by design and enabled as code, they're going to inevitably slow you down. A lot around standardization and simplification for many different reasons to create economies of scale, to reduce technical debt, to reduce operational overhead and the likes. Looking into how to digitalize journeys and experiences, both on the clients and partners interacting from the external environment with the bank, but also internally. So, as a business person, how can I get this market risk report faster? As a developer, how can I get a Linux machine provision faster? So, basically, looking into journeys and value streams and remove lead times on the way people interact within the bank's ecosystem. And then a lot around architectural modularity and composability. So how applications and platforms can be designed and deployed in modules. So they allow more flexibility and agility, but also elements of composability that I'm going to go to in the coming slides on how you can compose your application in a way that you can plug and play, say it like Lego bricks, components from your broader ecosystem so you can acquire capabilities without having to build them yourself if they already exist and they're of high interoperability out there. Now, let's describe a little bit what I mean with multi-speeds. Now, multi-speeds are all around us, right? We talk about multi-speed economy, multi-speed football leagues, multi-speed European Union, and you name it. And basically, multi-speed is the appearance of different speed levels within a situation. And in our case, the situation is an incumbent bank, but also its sub-situations, which in our case is the bank's business lines. Now, it is important to understand how different speeds are being generated, and primarily they're being generated in two ways. One is naturally, so based on the business context and regulatory demand in the bank, which tells you how often you should be able, for instance, to release, and let's say weekly, but also they're intentionally generated, and this is based on ambitions and ability. So if your team is very ambitious and it has great engineers, you can release on demand and be even better in a much better speed than what your context is asking you to be. Now, it's not very simple and it's not only covering speed. There's several parameters that characterize different levels. So time to market is one of them. Then the application criticality is another one. Is it your application the top 20 critical one? An interruption to it can cause interruption to the broader financial services economy and have impact to the real economy, to your clients, and trigger regulatory responses. Reliability as well. How strict compliance is on you. I mean, the larger the bank and the more client-facing its business line, the more it's prone to tougher compliance requirements. I'm sure you've heard of systemically important banks. If you're globally systemic, for instance, the compliance requirements are tougher if you are compared to if you are regionally systemic or if you're not systemic at all. Things around teams, Scrum functionality and autonomy. Technological capabilities. Obviously, if you run on a monolithic mainframe and versus a decoupled cloud native setup on the latter, you can obviously become faster. Architectural designs and many more. Now, giving an example in order to map it to the real context of a bank. So basically, in this example, we have the bank as a situation, and then we have two sub-situations. The two sub-situations is the capital markets units of the bank, which is actually the business line that is serving investments and trading for the bank itself, but also clients. And then we have retail banking, which is handling accounts, loans, cards, and you name it. Capital markets and retail banking are sub-situations. And then if we double-click into capital markets, we get to different areas that go into different speeds. So we have front office trading, which is actually applications that help you to execute trades, so to do the deal capture and execution of equity. And then you have middle office end of day. Middle office end of day, actually, there are some procedures that happen end of the day, so when the markets close. And there's some mathematical calculations, to put it so simplified, that then assess all your portfolio through the day, and they give you what is your risk exposure, how does your profit and loss look like, and what's the impact of your trading day into your bank's liquidity. Now, without going more into banking terms and rather confuse you if you're not in the domain, I picked up here some characteristics of these two different domains that belong to the same subdomain and make a difference into speeds. So basically, front office trading requires 99% availability, maybe a little bit more than that. While middle office, 97.5 is enough. The time to market for front office is on demand. For middle office is weekly, and that's more than sufficient. Data processing in front office is real time. Data processing in end of day, it is batch. So there's accumulation of data which is processed into jobs of dependencies, and that also creates a domino effect, as you can guess. And then traditionally, the front office applications, if not cloud native, definitely are more modern than the middle office applications, which are mostly legacy, especially if we talk about big, large data warehouses with spaghetti schemas and you name it. So with this example, I hope I give you a taste on how different speeds are being enabled within the same context. Now, you want to adopt DevOps Enterprise and you want to utilize DevOps in order to increase speed, right? And the question is, how can you create the necessary organizational governance and technological means to enable a tactical, and bear with me on the tactical, I will explain, multi-speed DevOps adoption. Now, tactical in this case means to focus on the top speeds. So the ones that need to go faster. The ones that don't need to go that fast, in my terms, we call it organic. So this is the rest of the organization that they can evolve in their own pace because they're not so critical for the firm. I'm not claiming they are not critical, but of less criticality based on the attributes that we looked at. Now, why I mention criticality? I equalize top speed with top criticality. And if you ask me what is the mathematical formula of criticality, it's looking into three variables. The one is how fast you gotta move, primarily, how reliable you gotta be, and how tough compliance is on you. So as you can guess, the higher the numbers on these three, the higher the criticality, which implies the higher the speed. So speed in this case, again to clarify, it is not only how fast you can release, but how critical you are for the operations of the firm, and with a dotted line to the external environment of the bank. So let us jump a little bit and discuss four perspectives on how you can isolate those top speed ones and help them to move in a different pace. So one is to define the criticality levels. And basically, criticality levels, they have a three-tier hierarchy. I have here two examples coming from the examples I also use in the multi-speed in order to help you relate. So firstly, you look into business domains. So two critical business domains in incumbent bank is core banking and capital markets. Having the domains defined, then you need to look into business flows. Business flows technically is a sequence of business steps in order for end value to be delivered to your client. So for core banking, it will be account opening. For capital markets, it will be the equity trading lifecycle. So basically, what's the lifecycle for trade from the deal capture and execution till it reaches the end of day state that we mentioned before. And then you have to see what are the critical applications that comprise this business flow. So without advertising any of the two, but I brought them here as examples because for the ones that you have worked in the FSI industry, you will be able to relate. Terminus is a critical application from a core banking platform perspective, Front Arena from an equity trading perspective. So looking into these three tiers, and then basically slice your portfolio is the first initial step. Now, having them moving in isolation in terms of speed, they're gonna go up to some point, but then they're gonna break inevitably because if their peripherals are not synced in the same speed, they're gonna eventually slow them down. So once you have chopped your portfolio, sliced it, if you wish, you need to break it into, to group it into value streams or ecosystems. So basically, value stream is looking into sequential steps of end value. Ecosystem is looking into a bundle of applications that their orchestration provide multiple end values, or it is super important from a regulatory perspective. Now, having defined these two ecosystems, you gotta make sure that they're cross-functional. So basically, they've got all the capabilities they need across skills and people to deliver on what is expected. Give them an as high as possible level of autonomy and self-sufficiency. And I know that in incumbent banks, this is in some cases a little bit of a fallacy, but there's definitely a lot of means, and I'll have some examples later on how people can prove that can gain autonomy and self-sufficiency. Let them to align internally on the priorities. Obviously, they're going to have to adhere to some enterprise level portfolio planning, but they can also take care of their own priorities and self-organize, and then make very clear to them what are the speed attributes they need to meet. So provide clarity on those, because in many cases, what I've seen in financial service institutions, compliance, primarily creating a red tape, or how available the application should be are the dominant ones, and this is a little bit of meeting other attributes, as I also mentioned in the previous slide. Now, common sense, you need to modernize in order to go faster, and ideally use reference architectures. Now, with reference architecture, we mean a design that it has been proved working already, and it can be replicated or even replicated and advanced in a similar context. Primarily here, you've got to look at the four ways of doing it. One is decoupling. So modernized application creating microservices, so you don't have a three-tier monolith, and you can have different modules that they can act individually. Use APIs primarily on the data side in order to decouple yourself from the ones that they need to move slower, and then enable error handling mechanisms. So if you still have dependencies to the slower part of the organization, you need to have mechanisms in order to bypass those, which are scenario driven. So if I don't get the latest data on time in the end of the day, how am I going to proceed without having my updated opinion, as an example? Because I need to become self-sufficient. Now, cloud nativeness. Definitely, I won't stick here a lot to infrastructure as a service, because infrastructure as a service primarily is used in incubated to flow data centers. I'm going to stick into platform as a service. So basically, get to utilize platform as a service technologies and components from public cloud vendors without having to build them within its ecosystem and do double the effort or duplicate solutions. Then infrastructure as code is helping a lot in order to provision faster your infrastructure. Even within your premises on your data center, it doesn't matter. I think cloud native helps you a lot with non-functional aspects. So basically, it can make your application more robust, more reliable, more scalable, and that will help you to save time on the operation side and primarily focus on innovating and engineering it as you move. Now, composability is the new black. Both composability and greenfield are the new blacks in the industry, but primarily composability. And then, as I said, think of it of Lego bricks. So think you have a platform that provides certain capabilities to a client in retail banking, and then you want to offer more capabilities, but you can, instead of building them yourself, you can acquire them from somewhere else and have a plug and play. So have a reference architectures on how to do that in order to acquire capabilities and be able to deliver faster and better integrate with your ecosystem can also help on speed. And here, actually, composability helps you, for instance, to enter new markets very fast. If you find a composable platform integrator in the country that you don't have a legal entity, but you want to experiment how welcoming the market is going to be to you, this is a great choice. And then greenfield, and I can't recall any big bank at the moment that hasn't either have had a greenfield online bank or is not in the making of one. And what do I mean with greenfield? So basically, with greenfield, you detach yourself from the corporate, from the incumbent bank, which is becoming your parent, and you, in certain cases, you also create a different legal entity, so you don't belong there anymore. But the important thing is you detach in terms of people, in terms of technological capabilities, processes. You start with a greenfield, as is pretty much self-descriptive, and you build it from there. Now, this gives you autonomy because you get to create a small bank of 30 people from scratch. Think about N26 and Revolut, they started a little bit like that. It helps you to detach from any legacy dependency, both on the technological side and processes. And also it does help you to experiment with releasing new products and services into new markets, into new client segments, in order to experiment if those also will make sense to be offered by your parent bank. Next one, the enablement perspective. So basically everyone needs help, and we say that people can move faster, but they might be lacking the means to do that. As we said, you need to establish these means and they need some support. Now, that's why you have enablement units. And I call it all hands on deck. And all hands on deck in this case means your enablement units joining forces and be dedicated to help those areas, those ecosystems, those value streams on top speed to move faster. I have some examples here. The list can grow immense, actually. I have myself in my career identified in an incubate bank 31 areas that one way or another can help with increasing speeds of the top of your portfolio. But for instance, you can have your DevOps COE providing best practices on how to speed up your software development lifecycle from the back. You can have your enterprise architecture COE or function supporting with reference architecture, evaluation of designs, and the likes, as mentioned in the previous slide. Your agile COE or unit to help them become better on self-organizing and agile ways of working. And also your IT risk and control area, which is actually can help them to optimize the implementation of IT controls across their SDLC, shifting from bureaucratic release management to release engineering. I haven't picked those out of coincidence. They are quite four vital ones. And I hope the way I explained it makes sense on why that is the case. Then obviously you have platforms. Technology is the backbone of adopting DevOps, and technology, after culture, in my opinion, and people's skills is what can hold you back. So you can have your platform teams engaging with these value streams and ecosystems and basically help them to do a demarcation between standardization and self-sufficiency. It is a pattern in incumbents in the recent years to shift towards standardization, as I mentioned, though in some cases it does make sense. It doesn't make sense because people are special, they need special technologies, maybe they're more advanced than the standard product. So you can't tell to someone that is way more advanced to shift to something that is slower. As I used to say in one of the banks I used to work, we were trying to convince some teams to move towards standardization. I was trying to convince my management that's a mistake because they already have a Ferrari and we give them a Ford Focus. So basically, no sense. So in that discussion, you get into an equilibrium of demarcation where they can be self-sufficient in technology and where they need to move towards standardization. Then you can sit together with them and design DevOps experiences and journeys. So basically, that's value streams on consuming technology and then ensuring that the whole technological ecosystem is interoperable as a service. Now, crowdfunding evolution. So you pay for it, you get it. So the value streams and ecosystem fund the DevOps, the platform teams on acquiring capabilities like technology, people skills, and the likes, so they can create products for them which actually can be experimented using top speeds. And if successful, then they can be offered as a service to the rest of the organization, which is the greatest win-win you can have in this case. And then what is also making a difference is exclusive onboarding of virtual task forces. So these are dedicated teams of different people from different platform teams. Let's say one person from your observability platform team, one from the CSD pipeline, one from your container platform, that actually join forces and they'll be dedicated for a certain period of time within the value stream and an ecosystem and help them to advance. Now, this might sound a little bit of discrimination in both cases because, okay, we do build certain units to help certain areas, but it's not in essence, and people tend to understand it in reality. So supporting the top speeds with full focus of these units eventually will increase the average top speed of the rest of the organization because it's going to create the organizational and technological means for the rest also to advance when the time comes. Number three, frameworks. And actually, frameworks and templating is becoming quite of a key tactic on scaling fast and replicate solutions and help people to move faster. I've handpicked it four here that I see of great value in the multi-speed context. So I'm going to start with what is called license to continuously deliver. There's some others calling it differently, but what is that in essence? It is a criteria checklist that if you fulfill, and these are primarily have to do with quality assurance, reliability, and automation, that you do get a license in order to continuously deliver anytime you wish. That is found in good crowd primarily in cases that incubators have decided to restrict people, for instance, to release intraday. Intraday in markets means during the trading time, to make sure that they don't introduce any fragility to the trade life cycle, as an example. But if you meet certain criteria, then you're allowed to do that. Then embed those into the SDLC in an automatic way, so people can generate the evidence automatically that, yeah, I'm good from a hygiene perspective, and just let me do my stuff. The whole adherence assessment also must be automatic, so you need to trust but verify in this case. The fact that they claim certain things happen doesn't mean that in all cases it will be right. And then also give them a mechanism so they can automatically renew it. So they should be getting this license for a certain period of time and then automatically renew it. Now, I'm sure you have heard this in other contexts. There's license to public cloud, there is license to operate, which is more on the compliance side, but you get the concept. So basically get them to streamline in certain criteria, make sure they work on efficiencies to meet those, and then let them go in the speed they wish because you're certain they won't crash the car on the wall. Then compliance is score very important. Incumbent banks, heavily regulated, especially the globally systemically important ones, are subject to several regulatory requirements. So policy engineering is key here. Defining policies, embed them in the tech building, and get to what we used to call in one of the banks I used to work, that people follow a process without realizing it, in essence. Now, very important here is you automate the whole evidence generation, and then you embed it into the whole SDLC, your change management process, auto approvals, and the likes. Two other important frameworks. One is release engineering. So you got to look across your SDLC, do evaluation stream mapping, as I mentioned, remove leak times, make sure that you have continuous development and continuous design. And people ask me, what do you mean with continuous development and continuous design? That you can incrementally, through release engineering, evolve your architectural design of your platform. And continuous development means that you consume the utilities you need as a developer in order to develop without lead times. Now, look into the whole release engineering on ensuring interoperability. So make your pipeline event-driven, and not only look into your basic CI and CD, spam into the peripherals of it as well. And overall, take a proactive and continuous approach on improving developer experience. I call it DevOps experience. Normally, I use developer because it's more of a mainstream frame, but DevOps experience, in essence, the people that are part of your SDLC, that you improve their overall experience through engineering needs. Now, last but not least, production readiness review engineering. The license to continuously deliver, it does give you a taste on how production ready you are, but you gotta be more thorough. And production readiness review is a term coming from SRE in Google. If you don't deploy SRE terms, you call it operational readiness assessment or something similar. But in essence, you have to ensure that you are ready across your SDLC, collect evidence across different domains, from design to hygiene to operations to compliance. And then why is that very important? Remember the criticality equation. That gives you a balance between time to market, reliability, and compliance. Because in some cases, you might be weaker in one of the three attributes, right? And through this production readiness review, you can see where you're weaker and where you need to focus. So maybe you can deploy on demand. You're 100% available, which is probably not the case, but let's say 5 nines, but you're having compliance gaps. So that will help you to adjust a little bit your speed in order to make sure that you keep an equilibrium. Equilibrium in speeds also is very important. Last but not least, organizing principles. So basically, you need to focus on enabling cross-functionality in your Agile DevOps teams, right? In whatever model you organize. You do basic Agile, just with Scrum feature teams. You are organizing squads in the Spotify model. You have ARTs and SAFe. Ensure the best full-blown possible cross-functionality, and try to get independent. And here we can have a lot of discussions between what independence and self-sufficiency and autonomy mean, but we're going to become theoretical and we don't have the time. But in the long run, you should strive to be as dependent as possible. Now, give a standardization wildcard. And here, standardization don't only focus on technology, right? Whether you need to use your core CI/CD pipeline and migrate from your existing one. It is processes, policies, and many other things. So these ecosystems and value streams, upon solid business specification, they should be able to bypass some of the standardization elements. Now, get them to self-organize the segregation of tasks. And here I'm touching a very sensitive point in banking. So banking primarily was historically organized as segregation of duties, and that doesn't fit anymore into the new era of doing DevOps. So try to find a way to organize the segregation of tasks, meaning not putting specific roles into people, but get them to wear hats based on situations. though I have to make you aware here that you need to have some very strong business justification, traceability, auditing, logging mechanisms to check well behavior and be able to prove to your regulator that you're on top of the situation. But then use communities of practice. And communities of practice in this case, when we talk about value streams in the ecosystem, it's not only people talking in forums and drinking coffee. It's having inner sourcing concepts on how these teams can, the value streams in the ecosystem can play both together and create synergy so they can learn from each other and move faster. Have some great stories that unfortunately I don't have the time to cover on how people that they move fast actually helped each other to move faster, but also create a coalition in order to explain to the broader organization why it is slowing them down. Then last but not least, create dedicated speed focus squads, right? And I'm picking that from Google. It's one of the many. There's no clear definition of SRE, but that's one of the main definitions that I like a lot. So basically, it says SRE is what happens when you change the tires of your racing car while you go 100 miles per hour. And that is the philosophy of SRE that is not only looking into reliability, but is looking into reliability with an equilibrium of speed, as also mentioned. And SRE finds good ground when there is need for speed. So you can get specific SRE teams to focus on release engineering, platform modernization, help you to become more predictable and prevent things from happening, fail fast and recovering fast. So it is a great method to not only look into reliability, but also how to make sure that reliability does not jeopardize the speed in which you want to move. So this is all I had. I hope I didn't cover it too fast, and I hope I managed to pass some key messages. Thank you for attending, and I'm ready for your questions, if any.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Yeah, I can't see unfortunately any questions, but I have one question to you. So, from your perspective, during that whole process of let's say transformation, delivering the application and so on, was there any, let's say, deal breaker which speed up the whole transformation or which opened people's mind?
The deal breaker actually there are two the deal breakers. One is to explain to your business partners how you can make most return of the money they invest
Mhm.
and actually prove it to them in a visible and tangible way so they can keep feeding their transformation, seeing their result. And second is to provide solid incentives to the people involved on the technological side.
Mhm.
And that is not only monetary. Obviously, money and perks is an important factor, but give to them the opportunity through these transformations to evolve their careers in the direction they want.
Mhm.
Once they start seeing themselves as part of the transformation and start seeing their personal development, the development of the firm,
Mhm.
they got to invest not only mind but also heart into what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I agree with you that, different types of communication, as you said, to business, that hey, you can save money or you can earn more money due to the changing processes, and with development teams that hey, you can develop yourself, you can make your CV great again, and something like that. Yeah, it's also really important factors for doing that that changes within the structure. And maybe if you, let's say, if you wanna implement something, let's say, similar within our organization, within our teams, because we realize that, hey, we are dealing with the same problems. So, would you recommend as the first step, starting even thinking about such kind of decision?
Absolutely. Actually, the first steps are two. One is to define why you want to do it. So, what are the objectives? And then go and look back into your context. So,
Mhm.
basically, it might be your objective that you're going to have all your digital frontier and delivering on demand and be 100% compliant. And it's fine to set that as an objective. You need to start with that because you need to be forward looking and energized and excited about the future. But then go back and look into your current context and do a reality check on where you stand at the moment.
Mhm.
So this is always what I propose when people define. I don't like the word strategy actually at all, But when they define strategies and objectives, it's one thing to say where you want to go, but at the same time, you need to have a transparency linkage to where you stand.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Yeah.
in many cases, the problem is that companies have corrupted data and they don't have a clear picture where they stand. In that case, what I propose to people is get the most intelligent, experienced, seasoned DevOps people of the organization and get them to do a reality check based on their knowledge and intuition.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly, exactly. Okay, thank you for your answers. I can see any additional questions on Q&A chat. So thank you for your presentation, and I hope that everybody enjoyed your presentation. I'm sure that everybody enjoyed, and yeah, we will meet each other within few minutes for the on the next session. So goodbye.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.